Today on the Talent Cast, is there an unspoken thing when people are looking for an employer brand? Is there some sort of mystery we're trying to solve? Is there some sort of missing piece? Yeah, there is, and that's actually a huge problem. We'll be right back. Welcome to the Talent Cast. I'm your host, James Ellis. This podcast has one simple goal: to change the conversation around recruiting, employer brand, and hiring. Simple as that. The only way we can do that is by making this a 100% no-pitch zone, meaning no one's making any money, no one's giving any money, nobody's sponsoring anything. So please come join us, come learn, come engage in this conversation, come grow our industry with me. If you want to talk to me, I'm on Twitter at The War for Talent, or you can look at our website, thetalentcast.com. Otherwise, let's get to it. Hey, how you doing? James Ellis here. Housekeeping. Literally 7 days from now, I will be winging my way from Chicago to sunny, I hope, San Diego for ERE. Are you going to be there? You should come see me, or at least say hello, or bump into me, or tweet me, or get on the app and nudge me, and I don't know, let's get coffee. Do I like coffee? If you have to ask that, what are you doing here? This must be your first day. By the way, this is my fourth cup of coffee. Thanks for asking. Also, going to be in Nashville next month. Let's call it next month. RecruitCon. Go take a look at that. And I'm going to be in Austin for Social Recruiting Strategies Conference. Show up for that one. If you need, discount codes or whatever, ping me and it'll hit me up, and I think I can help you out with the social recruiting ones. I might be able to help you with RecruitCon. We'll see how that goes. If you're asking me about ERE, it's really late. What have you been doing? You better get your ass in gear and make that happen. So, what do you want to talk about? Oh, by the way, one last thing. Last week, I was on Recruiting Animal, so if you get a chance and you think that's the sort of thing you want to hear and you missed it, you should absolutely hear it. I try not to sound like an idiot. I don't completely succeed. So there you go. It's a lot of fun. I get called Jimmy a lot, so that was something. But thanks for Animal for having me on. Had a great time once I figured out where I could fit and where I didn't. If you heard it, you know what I'm talking about. Thanks so much for listening. And then, hopefully when I get a chance to do more podcasts like that, hopefully, I will be able to talk about an upcoming episode of the Employer Brand Podcast. I'm trying to finalize details. It's not on Jorgen. If it's not on you, that's on me. I'm taking forever to make this happen. I am sorry. I apologize. I want nothing more than show up to your podcast. So there's that. Anyway, let's get back to the matter at hand. So I was shifting gears. I was messing around on Quora. You know Quora, Quora, the place where people ask questions and actually get decent answers, unlike, say, a Yahoo Answers place, which those answers are decent, but in a hilarious, sarcastic way. Quora is much, much better. Whether it's the culture, whether it's the fact that you can upvote things, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it does seem to work. And someone asked this question, and I'm not going to quote them, and I'm not going to name them out, because there's simply no need, because this kind of question is endemic to what we do here when it comes to employer brand stuff. And the question breaks down to, effectively, how do we build an employer brand that helps us look diverse? Another version of that might be, how do we build an employer brand that makes us look energetic? How do we build an employer brand that helps us look exciting or sexy? And we talked about sexy last time, right, or 2 times ago. How do we make an employer brand that makes us blank? And there should be an ellipse there, right? There should be that ... bit afterwards, and it should say what we all know to be true, because if you're asking this question, this has to be true, and that ... leads to when we're not. How do we establish an employer brand that shows how diverse we are when we're not? How do we establish an employer brand that shows how sexy we are when we're not, or how exciting we are when we're not, or how technologically driven we are when we're not, or how agile and flexible and here's a good one. How do we show off an employer brand that shows how much we care about employees when we don't? Right? Isn't that the piece that's... If you have to ask that question, how do we make an employer brand that shows off our diversity? And I'm going to focus on this one, not because I want to beat up on diversity for any particular reason, but because I think what applies to that specific question also applies across the board. And rather than get lost in the details, let's focus on one element here. Right? You're trying to say, so think about the thought process that got to that point where someone said, okay, I've seen the data. The data says The more diverse we are, the better off we are. There's all sorts of Harvard Business Review and other studies that show if you've got a diverse board, you're more likely to make money. If you've got a diverse company, you're more likely to come up with better solutions and more innovative solutions. And at times, things may be slower, but you end up faster to the final solution with fewer rework. And there's so many non-political, non-morality driven arguments for why diversity is so incredibly important for every single company. And I do not want this to be an episode about morality, so let's just assume that for business reasons, because it makes things so much simpler, that for business reasons you want to be more diverse or you want to show off more diverse. And the thing is, if you are not a diverse company, if you're a company of 50 people and you're all white dudes with a handful of white women thrown in, and that sounds like most companies I've worked around, you've got, I won't say token, but you've certainly got one person who might be vaguely brown or vaguely black or may actually be brown or black, but they're the only ones. Like they picked them up at a fair somewhere. You're like, oh, look what I found. I found someone who's diverse. And you check the box and we're good. And those companies, they're not usually pretty good at showing off gay people or veterans or, there's all sorts of elements of diversity that when you don't have diversity, what little diversity you have tends to curl up in a tiny little ball, armadillo style, and not show off, right? If you've got 50 white people and one black person, do you think that person is going to be the blackest person you've ever seen? No, they're going to kind of portray themselves to fit in. They're going to push out a little bit more of a white culture focus, and they're going to maybe hide a couple of bands and a couple of things they do or care about in their back pocket. You don't need to know about that. Someone once said, a friend of mine on Twitter, who I will not reveal, said, has there ever been a gay person who answered the following question truthfully to a non-gay person? How was your weekend? No. Every gay person says, look, you're a straight person. You do not need to know about my life to that level. I'm going to withhold a lot of stuff. If you are not in a diverse company, the trick is, even if you want to be diverse, getting over the hurdle of making yourself diverse is insanely hard. It's insanely hard. It's just absolutely hard, because if you're saying, okay, if we've got 50 white people and we want to bring in more black or brown, Latinx or whatever you want, whatever particular audience you want, Asian Pacific Islanders, I don't care. It doesn't matter. If you want to bring in more X, you have to have some X. The first black person is going to be terrified to work for you. They're going to look around and go, there is nobody here like me. Uh-oh. So you're not diverse, and this is a problem you have to solve. And you've had that thought where you said, well, gosh, if our employer brand says that we are diverse, then I guess it will be easier to attract diverse people. Well, how do you make an employer brand show off diversity when you're not? Well, you could lie. And I think the list ends there. If you're 50 white people and maybe one black or brown person, that person's going to be in a lot of photos, and it's going to show. It's going to be pretty crystal clear that it was like, that dude's there again. Everybody remembers the University of Wisconsin-Madison where they photoshopped in a black person into a photo they were already in. So that person literally shows up twice in a crowd, and you go, busted. You can lie. I mean, that's a way of showing. And that's usually the best way to do it, unfortunately. And actually, that's not true. It's not the best way to do it. It's a horrible way to do it. That's a bad way of doing it. But sometimes you feel like you have no other choice but to lie, right? If you were talking about how energetic we are, how youthful we are, how agile we are, how you get an employer brand that shows off how incredibly cool we are when we're not, you have to make something up. Or you have to go to that marketer's playbook of finding the unusual use case and blowing it up to be the standard case, right? Where you say, well, if you take this pill, you could lose up to 10% of your body weight in 6 weeks. You could, if you do 7,000 other things and never eat for 6 weeks, and you sit in a sauna for 6 weeks and sweat like a pig for 6 weeks, sure, that pill could connect to it, and it's a 1 in a million case where that's true, but you could point to that case and say, yeah, this is our standard case. And then, of course, the problem is when everybody buys that pill and no one loses weight, they go, well, what the hell? And you go, well, actually, turns out that was an outlier, and, your result is pretty standard. That's marketing bullshit, right? That's why no one likes marketers. And please, at this point, you should feel free to go look for Everybody Hates Marketers podcast. It's a lot of fun to listen to. It's a great French accent. He's a Frenchman living in Ireland, and I think that's amazing. Welcome to the future. The trick is marketing is bullshit. And if you try to learn bad tricks from marketers as a means of camouflage, where brand becomes camouflage instead of something that reveals, you're in trouble. You are in deep trouble. As Simon Barrow once said, employer brand is the hardest kind of a branding to do because you can't lie. The second you hire someone and you tell them we're an amazing and diverse company, and they show up and they look around and they go, no, you're not. Done. You are done. The lie has been revealed, and they're immediately either looking for the exit or mentally writing that unpleasant Glassdoor review. Either way, not a good result. Not a good result at all. You can't pull the wool over people's eyes. When I was a kid, I think I was probably about 9, maybe 8. I had a couple bucks I got from mowing lawns at my parents' house, my allowance and all that stuff, and I went to the Five and Dime. Yes, this is a real story. Yes, these things are actually true. Yes, there was a Five and Dime in Hohokus, New Jersey. These are all phrases that are 100% true, even though you don't believe it right now, but it's all true. I went to the local Five and Dime, a place where I normally get Swedish fish, one for a penny, and a person would spoon them out into little baggies for you. And I went and bought this little plastic kind of BB gun thing. It was called a pellet gun. Now, of course, this was the early 80s, so obviously the times have changed, and you're not just going to go buy a pellet gun or a BB gun just out anywhere. But you would get it, and the packaging made that pellet gun look super amazing. And you got it home, and it like the pellets would like blink out of the end of the gun. They would like fall out more than they were like thrust out. There was no range to it. The range was as far as you could fling them with your hand. It was crap, but the marketing made it look like this pellet gun did whatever. And what does the owner, the marketer care? Their job is to get you to buy because they know how hard it is, and it's not worth it. If you've dropped $3 measly dollars on this stupid little pellet gun, are you really going to bring it back? And is the owner of the Five and Dime or Walgreens or drugstore or toy store, wherever you bought it, going to send it back? Is it really going to be worth it to them? No. You are going to screw over the customer because you know it's not going to bite you in the ass. And that's exactly what happened. I swallowed it. I hated it. And my father took me aside and said, buyer beware. This is a good lesson to learn. And it's true, and it was. I wish I had had those $3 back at the time, but there it is. You can't play that game when it comes to employer brand. You cannot for a second. You know why the pellet gun trick worked? Because there wasn't anybody who had just bought the pellet gun standing next to it saying, hey, this was my experience. This is what happened. Certainly at the time, there was no Google and there was no Facebook. And let's not talk about Facebook this week. Maybe we'll get to that next week because we got to talk about Facebook. There was no Glassdoor. There was no internet in which I could query and say, what was your experience with this $3 pellet gun, and find out, oh, it's a piece of crap. Got it. Don't buy it. I understand. There was nothing like that. There were no Amazon reviews. There was nothing like that. There was no one standing next to it saying, don't buy that. And they counted on that. They knew as soon as I bought it, I would be disappointed, but that was it. That was the end of the transaction. When you're hiring someone and you have 50 white people who work for there and you're telling them that you're a diverse company, there are literally 49 other white people who could easily say, no, we're not. Have you looked around? No, we're not. And in fact, many of them have posted on Glassdoor, and many of them are easy to find on LinkedIn, and you can ask them a question, and it turns out one of them is a friend of your friend, and you can easily make that connection. You can't bullshit people when it comes to employer brand, and every time you do, it will bite you in the ass. How do you make yourself look diverse when you're not? Well, go start by being diverse. An employer brand is not camouflage. It is not cover. It is not a distraction. It is not something that makes something brand new out of whole cloth. You cannot turn, as my mother would say, a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I don't know anyone who says that, but there it is. You can't do it. You can't make it up. Can you find who you truly are and augment and polish and amplify? Yes. When you do that, for every amount of turning the volume up on a positive attribute, you should be fully aware that the negative attributes also follow suit. Whether you mean to or not, they will. So if you are, you're Uber and you talk about the amazing cutthroat mentality of that company and how aggressive everybody is and all the developers are really good, and you amplify that we're a bunch of developers and we like to break things as fast as we can and we like to push boundaries and break rules, and that sounds great. And we're a company where everybody seems to be angry at each other all the time because they're incredibly cutthroat, because they're incredibly competitive. And that also seems to foster this weird culture where diversity and gender diversity and having an open, accepting, inclusive culture is completely wiped out. They do not like women, or they do not promote women, and they do not support women, let alone people who are different colors and sexualities and whatnot, right? This is both amplified. Quick interruption. The goal here is to change the conversation around recruiting, hiring, and employer brand. The only way we can achieve that goal is with your help, and that is not with money, not with sponsorship. No. It's to just simply share us and review us. Simple as that. Just review us wherever you get podcasts, share us on social media, say nice things about us, or complain about us. That really is completely fair. That's all we really ask. That's all. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's get back to the show. How do I know? Well, for every time I heard about Uber being an amazing company, everybody pointed to the blog post last year or the year before that said, this was my experience in Uber, where a female developer or project manager said, this place sucked and I got sexually harassed pretty much 24/7 from the get-go. When you amplify one, you amplify the other. Why? Because they're connected. What's positive and what's negative is connected. That's true for you. It's true for your friends. It's true for your spouse or significant other. It's true for the brands you like. It's true for the brands you don't like. And it's very much true about your employer brand. If you try to polish how great and successful a person is, somewhere along the line, you should also kind of be aware that someone's going to polish the fact that they're a jerk, right? They might be successful, but they're also a jerk. And many people will look past the jerkitudinous, and yes, that's a word. I made it up, so it must be a word, to get to appraise the success factor, but some people won't. And that's what a brand really is. It's about making those judgment decisions individually. I make that judgment decision about my Mac or my iPhone or my sneakers or my bag or whatever. I make it. I may be influenced by other people, but I make it. I make the judgment call as to what I'm allowing in and what I don't. That's a brand. And so if you are busy polishing up what's positive, doing the whole accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative thing, you can't eliminate the negative. In fact, for a lot of brands, what is positive is literally negative for someone else. For example, you want to talk about how Amazon is an amazing place to work, but it is cutthroat. It is brutal. It is critical. It is all those things. What attracts people is what repels other people. They're both true. So if you try and say, how do we show, if Amazon tried to say our employer brand is about touchy-feely, kumbaya, fuzzy bunny, we're all in it together, let's hold hands and sing, you would say, you're not. How do you make an employer brand that makes everybody feel collaborative when you're not? Well, you don't. How do you make a diverse employer brand look like we're diverse when we're not? You don't. You don't focus on what's not true about your employer brand, about your employee's experience. You can't. You can't just pull something out of thin air, right? And don't try and do that bullshit marketing the other bullshit marketing tactic where you try and make something not up, but you pick something completely unnecessary and elevate it to be important. Here's a great one. And for you in the States, you know this one. You've heard this one a million times. For those of you not in the States, Coors Brewery is a very large beer brewery like Miller and Budweiser. Again, if you're not in the States, I don't know that you ever heard of these brands. They're pretty mediocre beers. They're the beer that is on tap everywhere you go, and it's kind of whatever beer. Coors beer is very much about cold filtered, cold brewed beer. It's always cold because it's of the Rockies being the mountains in the West. Now, I've never brewed beer. And I'm not a huge beer person. I'm more of a coffee person up until you get to whiskey and tequila. That's me. That's how you know. And you know that by now. I don't care about beer. It's not my thing. But at no point have I ever heard, and I do have friends who do love beer, at no point have I ever heard this beer was delicious because it was cold filtered or cold brewed or whatever it was. That's not a thing. It's not important. But because Coors is the only one who does this thing, they elevate this completely arbitrary element and market the crap out of it until you think, wow, Coors is delicious because it's cold filtered. Well, it tastes like Bud and Miller, so who cares? And they don't cold filter, so it doesn't matter. But you elevate it. It's a trick. It's a marketing trick. You see it everywhere you go. You see it everywhere. Remember, what was it? Saab a long time ago used to say better planes because we were born of airplanes, or better cars because we were born of airplanes, because the people who made the Saab and originally made the Saab also started by working on airplanes. So what? It was a crappy car. I hope you made better planes. But by picking an element that is differentiating, but is not differentiating in a meaningful way, but then elevating that meaningful so it looks meaningful, total marketing bullshit. Stop doing that. So if you try to say that your employer brand is all about how you have 50 people, or how everybody, oh, here's a good one. Everybody who works there has a degree or a master's degree. So what? So what? Everybody who works there went to a Big 10 college. Everybody who works there has previously worked at a Big 4 accounting firm. Everybody who works there used to work at one of the top consulting companies. So what? So what? That is not meaningful. That is not a meaningful distinction, not a meaningful differentiator, and it is useless. You are trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, and it doesn't work for very long. Why? Because people who know the difference are happy to speak up and say, that's bullshit, and they're right. So to the question of how do I make my employer brand look diverse when we're not, the answer is go get diverse. Yeah, that means things like quotas. Yeah, that means things like spending more time looking specifically for someone who has a different color, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation than you, specifically. Saying, look, I want to hire more people who aren't white dudes, and I don't just want to do it in HR. And unfortunately, HR ends up being the place where they I really don't get that. It really annoys the hell out of me. How HR tends to be the place where the diversity roles end up being filled, where the white dudes get every other job, but women and people of different ethnicities and colors and whatever, they end up taking all the HR jobs. It's crazy. It's so strange. I don't like it, not just because I'm a white dude in the HR space, but simply because it seems like if you're really meaning diversity, mean it everywhere, not just in one team or one in the other team. Anyway, that was a tangent. Enjoy coming back. If you want to portray diversity, you have to be diverse. Or you at least have to say how committed you are to diversity, and you are still growing, and you've decided this is a commitment you're making, that maybe you're not diverse today, but you are willing to do what it takes to become diverse in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, whatever your timeline is. You can project that out, and you say, these are the things we're willing to do. These are the things we're willing to change to make our company very diverse. I don't know, comfortable, inclusive and diverse, but really saying, look, we're willing to open the doors. Because historically, you look at that company that's 50% white people and you go, well, clearly they've had the chance to hire someone who's black or brown or whatever, and they chose not to. And it happened at least 50 times, so what the hell? Right? That is what every person who comes to that company who is looking for diversity is thinking. So you have to portray this. We are not diverse, but we want to become diverse. We want an employer brand that is truly inclusive and that is a relatively new thing, and we'd like people to help us get there. That might be an interesting employer brand to work with. That might be something useful. How you tag that and make that sound interesting, I'm not sure. That's a separate podcast. But that's a way of getting there. If your goal is to become diverse, you can't simply use your employer brand to say, we'll pretend we are and therefore we are. Doesn't work that way. You have to commit to being that, and then your employer brand can augment and amplify that, right? You can't be something when you're not. You can't portray about who you are when you're not that thing. It doesn't work. All right. Thanks for listening. That's a podcast. I'll see you next week. As always, if you want to bug me or ask, argue with me, and Lord knows I like that, at The War for Talent on Twitter, or go find the website, thetalentcast.com. Otherwise, I can see you all sorts of places like ERE next week. Like I said, find me, say hello, whatever. I'm not going to buy you a drink or anything, but, hey, say hello. I'm a vaguely pleasant human being, this podcast notwithstanding. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We out.